My name is Donald and I'm 56 years old. This is the first time I'm trying to explain my life. I'm married to Lorraine, who's 45, and we have a 13-year-old daughter. What I'm about to share happened a few months ago. My wife, daughter, and I were visiting Istanbul along with 2 other families, making it a group of 16 people in total. The trip had come to an end, and we were all set to return home together. We gathered at the Istanbul area airport to board our flight back to Chicago. It was going to be an 11-hour flight. We all gathered, and after a quick head count, we found out that our flight had been delayed by 6 hours. With 6 hours to spare, we decided to head to the airport lounge, expecting it to be crowded. To our surprise, we were the only ones there. Felt strangely quiet. Everyone settled in, sharing stories of our time in Turkey, the sights and the food. I went outside for a smoke and returned about 15 minutes later. As I approached my wife, I noticed a slim figure standing next to her. My heart began to race, not from the nicotine, but from something deeper. The closer I got, the faster my heartbeat became. I felt as if my heart might jump right out of my chest. My mind went blank, and I was suddenly transported back 20 years. I was holding her hand. I was there at the church beside her. I said, "I do," and kissed her. I took her home and we started our life together. But just as suddenly, I was back in the lounge. I walked up to my wife, telling her I needed some air. I walked out without looking at the woman who was now talking to her. As I stepped outside, memories flooded back. She was there and I was happy. She was happy. I closed my eyes, and I was once again back in Columbus, Georgia, beside the Chattahoochee River where we often sat. Her name was Maria, and she was my life. I'd always loved her ever since I first saw her in college. She was mine and I was hers. We got married and moved in together. Life as a married couple began wonderfully. I worked as a journalist, traveling constantly to cover stories from wars to famines. Maria, meanwhile, had become a financial expert. Though our jobs kept us apart, we made sure to stay in touch. Her sparkling eyes always brightened my day. When I was home, we spent our time making love and enjoying the delicious meals she prepared. "Will you always love me like this?" Maria asked one night, gazing into my eyes. I gently stroked her bare back and replied, "Forever and ever." The first 2 years of our marriage passed smoothly. Felt like nothing could ever go wrong. We decided to wait on having children, choosing instead to focus on our careers. We wanted to make a name for ourselves, build our finances, and settle down. The only real issue in our relationship was my mother. She lived alone and often wanted to see me. Maria never liked her. I never asked why, but my mother was a soft, caring person, and I tried my best to keep the peace, balancing both their needs. It was in January when my mother fell ill. I told Maria that I needed to visit her to care for her. She wasn't happy about it, especially since I had just returned from covering a story in Iraq. We argued. She suggested I hire help for my mother instead of going there personally. I told her that my mother was old, and this might be the last time I could see her alive. Maria wasn't happy, but I didn't let it bother me. 3 days later, my mother passed away in my arms. I was devastated. After the burial, I returned home, and once again Maria started complaining about my mother. I was taken aback, unable to understand what she was trying to say. She kept mentioning how much trouble my mother had caused, how she should have gone to the hospital sooner. I remained silent, trying to make sense of why Maria would speak ill of someone who was no longer here. Finally, I snapped. "She's gone, Maria," I said. "She won't come back or respond, so just zip it." Maria got angry, and that week we didn't speak to each other. I tried to break the silence by taking her out for dinner. That night we made love, but things still felt strained between us. The following week I went on assignment to Afghanistan to cover the historic Silk Road. Meanwhile, Maria was advancing in her career, getting promotions, and her salary was growing. When I returned 2 weeks later, I was greeted, as always, by Maria's big hug and sloppy kiss. But during dinner, I noticed she seemed tense. "We need to make some changes in our lives," she said. "What kind of changes?" I asked, curious. Your constant absences aren't working for me anymore. There are days when I long for your touch, but I come home to an empty bed. I don't want to cheat on you. So either you find a job that keeps you near me or find me a job that allows me to travel with you. I was caught off guard, but at the same time, I was relieved that she was being honest and open with me. I told her that I would find another job. We discussed it briefly, and by the next morning, I had already resigned from my position. I started searching for a job closer to home. I found one at the local TV station. It didn't pay as well as my previous job, but it kept me near Maria. When I told her, she wasn't thrilled. Your salary is down by 30%. Are you serious? She said, anger creeping into her voice. I tried to explain that it was a necessary compromise for a more stable, home-based job. Sometimes, no matter how educated or intelligent women are, they struggle to acknowledge the reality that certain choices come with sacrifices. The job wouldn't offer the same salary or PR as my previous one, but it would keep me closer to her. She didn't take it well. She was upset that I was now bringing in less money, and she was concerned about how it would affect her lifestyle. We both tried to move past it, but things started to deteriorate. Over the next 3 months, we began talking less, and the intimacy between us nearly vanished. Her once loving demeanor had shifted to constant nagging. She found faults in everything, and there wasn't a single day that passed without us going to bed angry. One night, things got so bad that she asked me to stop breathing while I was asleep because my breathing was disturbing her sleep. It was then I realized how distant we had become. A few days later, I couldn't find my phone. I picked up Maria's phone to call mine, and I noticed something odd. It was locked. She never locked her phone before, and I hadn't locked mine either. Why was there a lock now? Was she hiding something? It was a Thursday night when she came home after a late-night party with her colleagues. I heard the doorbell ring and opened it to find her standing there in a black dress, her hair disheveled and no trace of lipstick. What happened to you? I asked, concerned, as I guided her inside. I drank a bit too much and now I'm tired, she said, sounding distant. I helped her to the bedroom, and when she began to change into her usual nightdress, something caught my eye. She wasn't wearing any panties, which was odd because she never went out without them. As she removed her dress, I noticed a bruise on her left eye. It was a dark purple mark. She had never been one to go out without panties, so what had happened? Had she gone commando or had she lost them somewhere that night? I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. Couldn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind restless. As a journalist by nature, I needed to know the truth. I had countless contacts who could help me dig it out, but this was personal. I knew what I had to do, and I needed no help. 3 weeks later, I found myself outside a Motel 6 on Victory Drive. It was 2:30 p.m., and I had tracked Maria's car here, room number 12. Every nerve in my body screamed as I approached. I unlocked the door and stepped in. Across from the entrance, the monitor blinked at me, a silent witness to what was happening in the adjoining room. And there they were, Maria, my wife, on all fours, and Steve Bowman, her blonde lover. Steve, my old enemy from college, the one who had always had his eye on Maria. He'd taken her on a date once before, but she chose me. But clearly he hadn't let that go. My Maria now, screaming in ecstasy as Steve moved with her, his arrogance palpable. Did he do good? I thought bitterly, her words echoing in my mind just as they had left her lips moments earlier. Tears no longer came. I was dead inside. My heart ached, but the pain was numbed by the cold realization of betrayal. Weeks of investigation had led me to this, a truth I had never wanted to find. I wanted to break down the door to put an end to it all, but I had made a promise. The motel manager, paying back an old favor, had agreed to help me set up recording devices in the room. His only condition: no violence, no property damage. A steep price for clarity, but one I had reluctantly paid. Outside the motel, I smiled to myself, a grim, hollow smile. I walked to my car and parked behind the Mustang, Steve's Mustang. Pulling out my ice pick, I methodically pierced all 4 tires. A small but satisfying act of revenge. Then I waited. An hour later they emerged. Steve had his arm draped possessively around Maria's bare waist. They laughed, oblivious to the storm brewing just feet away. I snapped a few pictures, tucked my camera away, and stepped out of my truck to confront them. Maria's face went pale as she saw me. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Steve, however, smirked, a sinister grin that spoke of victory, of having taken something that wasn't his. He still held her by the waist, and Maria's feeble attempts to push his hand away were almost pathetic. "Hey, Don," Maria said, her voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" I stared at her, unblinking. She faltered, then tried again. "I can explain, it's not what you think." "I'm not thinking," I interrupted, my voice sharp and cold. "I'm observing." My eyes dropped pointedly to Steve's hand on her waist. "Looks like he's taken my wife." No, it's not that," she stammered. "We just had a meeting." "A meeting," I repeated, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "Did this meeting involve you getting on all fours and calling him good? Because that's what it looked like." Maria gasped, her face a mix of shock and shame. I leaned in, my voice lower but no less cutting. "It's all on video, Maria. Every second of it. And guess what? I'll be sharing it with our friends, family, and Linda. Isn't that right, Steve?" Steve's smirk vanished in an instant. "Leave Linda out of this," he barked, his bravado faltering. "Linda, your wife? Funny you mention her," I said, my voice calm, almost amused. "She already seen your little meeting live. She's just waiting for me to hand her the footage so she can take it to court. Say goodbye to your Mustang. It'll be paying for her settlement." Steve's face twisted with rage, and he lunged at me. Big mistake. Years spent in war zones like Iraq and Afghanistan had taught me more than how to report. They had taught me how to survive, how to fight. His right hand swung clumsily toward me. I blocked it with ease, stepped forward, and delivered a solid left hook to his chin. He staggered, but he wasn't done. He charged again, only to meet an uppercut that sent him sprawling to the ground. This time he stayed down. Maria stood frozen, her face a mask of horror. She didn't move, didn't speak. I looked at her one last time, the woman I had once loved with all my heart, now a stranger to me. Without a word, I turned and walked away, leaving them both behind in the shadow of their betrayal. I looked at Maria and motioned for her to get in the truck. Without a word, she obeyed. We drove in silence, not toward home, but straight to my lawyer's office. Maria glanced at me several times, her lips parting to speak, but I raised a hand to silence her. When we arrived, we were directed to the large conference room. She and I sat on opposite sides of the long table, the tension between us so thick it was almost suffocating. The silence stretched heavy and dreadful until Ron Freeman, my lawyer, entered the room. He approached Maria and handed her an envelope. "You've been served," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Let me outline the terms. We filed for divorce on grounds of irreconcilable differences. You and Don own no joint property, so there's nothing to divide there. His mother's house has yet to be legally transferred to him, meaning you have no claim to it. He has agreed to give you half of the money in your joint account. As of now, that account has been split, so you're free to withdraw your share. Given your higher income, there will be no alimony. That's all from our side." With that, Ron left the room, leaving Maria holding the envelope. She looked at me, her eyes a mixture of shock and despair. I finally broke my silence. "If you think about contesting this," I began, my voice low but steady, "I'll change the grounds for divorce to adultery. I'll make sure everyone, friends, family, your workplace, sees the recordings. I have every second of it. It will be shared on social media. Your office will fire you, and I'll ensure you get no recommendations anywhere. If you think running to another city will help, think again. I'll follow you and make sure the rest of your life is spent under the weight of your reputation. Do I make myself clear?" Maria nodded, her face pale, her hands trembling as she clutched the envelope. I stood to leave, but as I reached the door, her voice stopped me. "Don't you want to know why I did it?" she asked softly. I turned back to face her. "Why?" You wanted a life I couldn't provide, I said. Before she could respond, I continued. You wanted to fly high but expected someone waiting for you when you landed. You wanted fast cars, fancy hotels, and lavish meals. Steve gave you all that, didn't he? And what did it get you? A few months of fun, then what? Would you have gone looking for another Steve and then another? Happiness is a state of mind, Maria. You could have been happy with less or miserable with more. Now look at you, standing here with an envelope and nothing else. I turned and walked out, leaving her behind with her regrets. Months later, we met in court. I didn't look her in the eyes, didn't acknowledge her presence beyond what was necessary. The divorce was granted. Steve, as expected, didn't file any charges against me. He would have lost. The cameras at the motel parking lot proved he was the aggressor. I sent the videos and evidence of Steve's affair to Linda, his wife. She didn't waste time. She divorced him, got a hefty settlement, and rumor had it her brothers paid Steve a visit, leaving him with broken bones and a bruised ego. He lost his job, his Mustang was sold to cover his debts, and Linda's father, a well-connected man, ensured Steve's downfall. I heard whispers that Linda's family wanted to punish Maria too, but Linda stopped them. I respected her for that. I moved on, left my old job, and was soon hired by another publication in a different city. Life went on. Today, I'm at the Istanbul airport, a chief journalist for a prestigious magazine, with a wonderful wife and a beautiful daughter. I returned to the lounge to find my wife still deep in conversation. Hours passed and I kept my distance. She kept glancing at me while talking to a woman. Maria. My heart raced. I'd never hidden my past with my wife, but I couldn't help but wonder what Maria might be plotting. Later, as we queued for boarding, I checked with the airport officials to confirm the departure time. Finally, we were on the plane, seated side by side. My wife smiled, a different kind of smile, warm and knowing. What was that about? I asked. Oh, that lady? She replied with a teasing grin. Your ex-wife, Maria. She just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, I echoed, puzzled. Yes, she said, her smile widening. I thanked her. If she hadn't screwed up, I wouldn't have you. I stared at her, my confusion deepening. Did she say that? No, she laughed. She didn't talk about you at all. I read the court orders and your investigative material. They were in the attic. Maria just talked about how much she missed her ex-husband and how she'd trade everything to have a life like mine. I smiled, leaned back in my seat, and closed my eyes. Whatever Maria had lost, it wasn't my concern anymore. I had everything I needed, and for the first time in a long time I felt at peace.